All right. Hello, everybody. After working on the wings for a little while, I want to take a break. So today, what we're going to be doing is working on Pearlie's back legs, and we probably won't make both today, but we're going to make at least one. And obviously, once both are made, then we're going to sew them onto the body. And we also need to make both front legs, which in the pattern are called arms. I'm not sure what to do for the eyes yet because I have plenty of safety eyes that I think are the right color, but I've also made eyes with French knots before, and that can look pretty cute. Let me get a stitch marker. 1 second. Okay. Bright neon. We're going to start with 6 single crochet in a magic ring. It's how a lot of patterns start. It looks like the legs actually shouldn't take too long. We might be able to make both today. I think they're shorter because they're the back legs, so they're mostly there for support. Next, we're going to increase around. We're making the bottom of the feet right now. So we're going to increase pretty quickly to make the flat bottoms. We are also going to stuff the feet, but the pattern actually says not to stuff all of the legs and to leave the thigh hollow. So that's what we'll do. I don't know that much about the mother of pearl moths, so I wonder if they have like a season when they're active. Moths usually don't live that long, and it's winter where I live. So usually I feel like this is the time when you don't see as many bugs, but I think it's the jewel caterpillar. There's some kind of moth that like only lives in the winter and it just like eats and eats and eats and eats and like has eggs and then expires, which is absolutely crazy. Recently, I was thinking I might start using the fabric scraps that I have as packaging, like to cushion jewelry or plushies or whatever I might need to send out in the mail. And at first I thought, wouldn't that be messy? And then I realized a lot of quote unquote like professional companies, they just use like these weird scraps of paper, which not only create a massive mess, they stick to whatever the product is. And they're usually new paper too. So they create pollution. And maybe it doesn't matter at that point. Fabric scraps are the neater option. Speaking of craft supplies, I do have some good news from work. At the break room, there is this table at my work. And sometimes people will bring things that they don't need anymore or that they want to donate, but they know that 85% of at least clothes that go into thrift stores end up in landfills. So they'll bring stuff and just put a label on it that says free. Anyone who wants this can have it. And last week, somebody brought a whole new set of earbuds. I didn't need them, but somebody else took them. So what I did was I brought some art supplies I tried that hadn't worked out, like some sets of markers, each of which I'd only used once. They were perfectly fine. And I put them all on the table. And I was worried, like, are they all going to get taken? But by the end of my shift, which was only 4 hours, they were all gone. So I think that's really cool. And I hope the people that got those like them. Last time I was at work, I brought in an old sunglasses case that I had. It was like vintage. I think there's value to it. And a thingy that you use for finger knitting. I don't know what it's called. And two spools of ribbon. And at first I was like, this is so random. Will anybody take it? But again, by the end of the day, it was all gone. So maybe I have like other crafters at work and I want to get to know them better. I also have so much extra yarn, especially yarn like that's still in the package. I think that has a higher value that I don't need. So I might take it to work and see if anyone else wants it. I legit have like a bag of green yarn that's like 10 skeins that I'm not going to use, but I don't want it to go to waste. Recently, I also had some more yarn handed down to me, and I'm not sure if I'll use all of it, but some of it is such a small weight. It's like sport weight or something. I think I could make something like really small, like a figurine. When we sew these on, we're going to sew them on almost at the tail. And before you add all the like moth and dragon features, she's going to look kind of like a dinosaur. It's very cute. I think it would be fun to paint a moth like this one day too, especially with the shiny colors. I think it'd look beautiful in watercolor. Right now we're making the foot shape. It looks like a little boot. Next, we're just going to do a round of normal single crochet. And we are supposed to start stuffing this, but it's so small that I'm only going to use a tiny little bit. I think it looks bigger when it's like outside of the thing, but when you use this stuffing, it actually packs down a lot, like snow. This should be 12 stitches around. Let's see. I feel like this kind of moth looks like it would live in the winter. Not necessarily the real mother of pearl moth, but the one that I'm crocheting because it's mostly white. It looks like it would camouflage well. But again, I'm curious about the purpose of being shiny in real bugs. I wonder if it's kind of like how space equipment is usually reflective. And the reason for that is so it can reflect heat, like from the sun, so that the electrical components don't just like overheat and stop working. I want to know, how did insects evolve to have 6 legs? There's so many different animals that have different amounts of legs, and I guess legs are technically convergent evolution. But like what was the first creature that was evolving out of like the algae in the ocean in the stromatolites and stuff? And there was like single-celled organisms, and there's a bunch of tiny creatures that look like little blobs floating around in the ocean, and then eventually we get like a bunch of tiny feet like on the hallucigenia, and then some of them were like, let's downsize. But not by that much. We still have 6 legs, or arachnids have 8 legs for some reason. And a long time ago, there was 8-foot tall centipedes running around that don't really have 100 legs, but it sure looks like they do. And it was like, yeah, we've hit peak performance. We're not changing from our prehistoric designs. Once we're done this row, we should have 15 stitches. I wonder if anyone's done like that meme that is like, as you can see, his form has not changed in millions of years. This is because he's without flaw. About the coelacanth, because it's not like they haven't changed at all, but they haven't changed very much in literally millions of years, and they still walk around a little with their bony fins, and they taste so bad and are so slimy that animals won't eat them. So I guess that's one way of defending yourself. I think they are edible for humans, but again, we don't really enjoy it. We shouldn't need to stuff this too much more. We're getting to the heel of the foot. Okay. Once we stuff this, we're going to start working on the thigh, and we're going to leave that empty. Okay. The feet are going to be pretty small, so it helps give me more scale of how big the final creature will be. It'll probably still be costly though, just because it takes so long and it takes a lot of work to put together. I kind of feel like adding the belly plate would make this look almost too tough because I want this to look like a really delicate, soft dragon. So I might skip that. And I'm not sure if I'll do the mate. I've talked about it before, but I'm still not 100% sure. It doesn't, I don't know. I feel like it makes this look more tough, and that worked for the other dragon I was doing, strawberry, but I want this one to look more cute and delicate. All right, next we're going to do 2 rounds of normal single crochet. Let's stuff the heel a little bit more. It feels a little soft. Okay. Yeah, these take a quicker time than I thought. We might be able to do the second one today as well. Speaking of animals and like the snow, I kind of want to learn more about the tundra because I know extremely little about it. I know there's like plants that grow well there, like mosses and lichens, and I know there are animals like the Arctic fox. There's a few creatures that are just adapted really, really well to surviving the cold and the dryness, both of which are not easy. And I don't know how that works or how it evolved. I also want to do more research on the Devonian period, which is the time that's also called the Age of Fish, because there was so many marine creatures just hanging out and evolving at that time. Because I think it's super interesting, but I only know a very small amount about it. And it's given me ideas for a story. So I want to make sure I have background on that. I might also do more research on like human history because I think it would be fun if that story takes place in a historically inspired setting, but obviously not in our real world. It's a fantasy world. I think it could be fun to mix in influences from different time periods and places too. Because I was thinking there's some architecture, there's some clothes I like from the 1700s. But if you go forward like at least 100 years and you get to like steampunk and stuff, that's also super cool. So I might mix those together. But I also love learning about the ancient world, so I might lean more into that. All right, this is going to be the thigh part. This is what we're leaving empty. Okay, now we're going to start decreasing. I think this part is meant to look like a bent knee, like the dragon is crouching, and that's why this part is smaller than the front legs. It's like sitting down on its back legs. I remember learning once that I think it's snow leopards. They have such a massive bushy tail because they use it to keep themselves warm. In the super cold, they like lay down or they sit down and they wrap the tail around themselves and it's like a big scarf. I love learning about how different animals evolve and how they function because it helps me think more about like monster designs or creature designs. And they obviously don't have to be exactly like the real world. They're fantasy creatures. But I think keeping that in mind, like what happens with different evolutionary pressures, I think that helps make even fantasy creatures more believable, like in Dungeon Meshi, for example. All right, this next round is gonna be all decreases, and then we're gonna fasten off. I'm not sure if we're gonna close it yet, but maybe. See, it's like a little boot. Last year in my science class, I was learning about hydrothermal vents and how recently there have been theories that that might be where life started with all the heat and the chemicals and stuff. And that's just so cool to me. And even if we never know exactly how it happened, I don't think there's any one thing that made it happen. I think a bunch of things just happened by chance and some of those things caught on. I think it's super cool to learn about that stuff, like amino acids. Six. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I know we need to leave a long tail so that we can sew this on. Cat hair. I always love this part where you're sewing the ends closed. I wonder if that's like a common thing that crocheters like. Okay. All right. There's the first foot. This part is what we'll be sewing onto the body. All right. Now let's make the second one real quick. I kind of want to make another mermaid, and I have like more than 20 mermaid patterns saved, but I also don't have the right colors for most of them, and right now I'm under a kind of challenge where I use only the yarn that I have, or at least as much as I can, because I have so much on hand and I wanna go through all that first. Some of it I don't think I'll really use, so I might just cut it up and use it for stuffing so that it doesn't go to waste. But I do wanna use a lot of it, and some of it is so small, like I was saying earlier, I've never made something with that tiny of yarn, so I don't like, I love the colors of it, for example, but I don't know what I would make. If I tried to make a dragon with it, it really would turn out like a figurine. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. I feel like a lot of times when I'm making this little circle, it looks like a pizza. I can't get it out of my head. It always looks like a pizza, and I don't know why. I don't even really like pizza. I was learning a little about elephants recently. Apparently, they have this spongy stuff in their feet that allows them to sense vibrations, and that's one of the ways that they communicate. When they trumpet or make like really loud noises, it's not just about the noise that you hear in your ears, it's also to create like a rumbling effect that they can sense from really far away. I really want to know how on earth they developed a trunk, because that's like so specific and so useful emotionally. Evolutionarily, it's like mostly muscle, it's prehensile, it can grab things, it can breathe, it can spray water. How do you get that? Who what evolutionary pressures were there that created this? How do you evolve like a prehensile nose? Was there like some things that could like slightly move their noses? And those were the ones that survived and it just kept going until you get a trunk? I don't know. Are they even I don't think they're even that old of creatures, like, on the geological timescale, so how? Okay. I can always fit my finger into these. I remember once hearing about how cheetahs are, like, super min-maxed from an evolutionary scale because 'cause they're really good at running, obviously, their whole bodies are designed around that, but they're not very good at making, like, normal cat noises. They get tired really quickly, and, like, outside of running Like, that's their main thing. They're not awesome at a bunch of other things. There's this artist, I can't remember her name right now, but she's really cool, who makes crochet patterns inspired by prehistoric animals, like in the Cambrian period, and they're super cool and I love them. So I might have to save up for it, but I really want to get her pattern books and I want to make them. Like I want to make like the Titanoboa, for example, but I saw that it has over 200 rows, so that will be quite a project. And the big centipede whose name I can never remember, but it starts with an A. I want to make that. It looks so cool. I think it has like 40 feet, but you make a bunch of little chains and you like crochet up and down those, so it's not too bad. You can make the hallucigenia too, which like I think would be super cool to have in my plushie collection. What did I do? I don't remember. Okay. Now we're just going to do single crochet. I've seen some research suggesting that humans evolved maybe in damp forests or swamps, maybe. And I want to know if we can tell that for sure, because we've found like perfectly preserved humans in bogs. And I wonder if that's one of the places where people first evolved, you know? There's water, there's food, things like that. And then they started exploring, and it kind of just spiraled from there, I guess. We're getting up to the heel again. Something I'm also very curious about with all these animals stuff is I don't know a lot about what the continents looked like at the time because this was like millions of years ago. So during the Devonian period, for example, you wouldn't have had like the shapes of South America, North America, and stuff as we know them today. You would have had completely different masses and like was there land animals at the time? I don't know personally. I don't know that much about it. What did it look like? If you go to different places on land, it's already wildly different because of different weather and different terrain and stuff. And then you go into the ocean, which is like a whole other planet of biodiversity. And it's like, what are we even dealing with here? Okay. I do also want to know where the different periods get their names. Remember reading once, I think, that Cambria is Wales in Welsh. So how is that the name of the age of fish? They probably come from people's names. Maybe there was a guy named Cambria or something that started talking about it. And I do think it's very funny. Well, that's not the age of fish, that's the age where everything looked like a needle. There's a bunch of long spindly creatures, but you get what I mean. I do find it very funny that there's the Devon Corporation in Pokemon and there's the Devonian period because I think those are probably like old scientist names and they're both named after the same guy. I'm gonna do a bit more stuffing in a minute. I want to have more of a lip here so that it doesn't immediately fall out. I was looking at some crabs at work the other day. I was looking at the crab legs, and for some reason it didn't click for me until now that some crabs have 10 legs. Why? Like, it's super cool to look at, but I would be scared if I saw them running at me in real life. Like, if you just tell me about the idea of a spider crab, okay, it's just a spider crab. But if you put me, like, in the water and there was, like, this 10-foot wide thingy with giant legs walking towards me, then I would be scared. Some of them only have, I think, 6 legs too, and I wanna know why. Like, there's a lot of variation, even as we joke that everything becomes crab because it's so effective. Not all crabs are created equal. They're completely different. All right, now we're going to do another 2 rounds of just normal single crochet. I don't know exactly when butterflies evolved, but that is also something I'm curious about because I know there was like the giant prehistoric dragonfly called the Meganora, and those are so effective that they're still around. Like it blows my mind that there are some creatures, some plants and animals alive today that like they look almost exactly the same way that they did in prehistoric times, or they're still like recognizably the same animal, just smaller. And it's like a photo or something from the past that's still exists now, but it's still alive. And isn't that amazing? I think it could be interesting in a fantasy world to have it be like there are just creatures that live a really long time. Not necessarily the same species, but there'll be like creatures that like the further out you explore, like the older they get, and you're like, oh, this thing was alive 100 years ago. This thing is over 300 years old or something. And as you examine them, you can learn about what life was like a long time ago. I really want to know too how people find out about the weather in prehistoric times because using like chemical evidence in rocks and stuff, we can at least make a good guess as to what the climate would have been like in different periods of dinosaur times, for example. And I want to know how people do that because I get like the general idea, but it's just so cool to me. I really want to know how it happens. Like what kind of like weather were the giant dragonflies flying around in, for example? Was it still hot and swampy? What kind of ocean was like all the fish swimming around? And I don't remember any names right now. Was it cold? Was it really hot? I don't know. Hold on. I want to say there were like giant butterflies, but I don't know any of their names, and I don't know how they were different from now. Because remember, like flowers as we know them today didn't evolve until relatively recently on the geologic time scale. Plants as we know them showed up after only millions and millions and millions of years. So what were they pollinating? Did pollen exist? Who knows? Well, some people know, but I don't know, and it's something I want to learn more about. I remember I've talked a little bit about this on stream before, but I remember learning a little bit about like the earliest life forms and how PLOOD might have evolved to mimic seawater. And I had this weird realization like, yeah, that had to evolve too. Stuff like conventional sight had to evolve, body fluids had to evolve, like a lot of stuff that I think we can take for granted. All right, next row is going to be the last one. Then we'll be done for today. Nice and flat. I think pine cones are really old too. I don't remember the details anymore, but I think there was like pine cones in some dinosaur times, which is crazy to me. There would have been like giant oak trees and ginkgos and stuff. That's really fun to me because, again, there's so many things that were completely different in prehistoric times, but some of them also would have looked like the same as they do now. A lot of Florida, for example, it has big alligators and crocodiles like the Dinosuchus. It has big oak trees. It has lots of swamp. Some parts of it are not that different from dinosaur times. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Still gonna leave a long tail. Okay. Okay, there's the second little foot done. And again, these are the back feet, so they're just going to stand, and this will be sewn onto the body, and they'll provide the support so that the plush can stand up. So next time, I think we'll start working on the arms, and after that, we'll do the head, and after that, we'll do the wings. So I will see you there.